Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're really jumping into all the speculation around the upcoming iPhone 17 series.
Mm.
We've looked through a bunch of stuff, McRumors, Tom's Guide, ZDNet, ESR, even some Reddit threads to see what people are saying.
Yeah, it's quite a mix, isn't it? Leaks, analyst thoughts, user chatter.
Exactly. So our mission here is to kind of cut through that noise, figure out what seems most likely, what could really impact you if you're thinking about upgrading down the line. Okay, ready to dive in?
Let's do it. It's always fascinating how early this cycle starts, the sheer volume of, whispers and predictions.
Totally.
And what we want to do is try and connect some of those dots, look at the rumors that keep popping up, and really explore what they might actually mean.
Right, and one of the biggest ones, it seems, is this potential design overhaul, at least for the Pro models, the 17 Pro and Pro Max.
Ah, yes, the camera bump saga continues.
It does. Apparently, we might be saying goodbye to that square island on the back. The word is it could become this horizontal rectangular bar, kind of
Like the Google Pixel phones, yeah.
Yeah.
That's the immediate comparison everyone's making.
Right.
And the leaks, the CAD renders and supposed part images, they suggest the main lenses, that triangle formation would be on the left side.
Okay.
And then things like the LiDAR sensor, the mic, the flash that move over to the right.
Yeah.
Creates a more symmetrical look, I guess.
It's definitely different. A big shift from what we're used to with iPhones. People always joke they look the same year after year. But now there's talk of this really noticeable change. And the reaction online, especially checking out Reddit, it's all over the place.
It really is.
Some people seem to hate it. I've seen words like horrendous, ugly. Do you think Apple would actually go with something so polarizing?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Apple's definitely not afraid to make bold design choices, even if the initial reaction is, let's say, strong.
True.
But, some folks on Reddit raised a practical point, too. Maybe that wider bar makes the phone more stable when you put it down flat.
Ugh, the classic table wobble fix. Maybe that's the secret motivation.
Could be. And the material for this new bump looks like it might be aluminum.
Oh, interesting. Why aluminum?
Well, the thinking seems to be it's strong, maybe helps create a bit more internal space for all the camera tech they keep cramming in there. Some are drawing parallels to the new iPad Pro design language, too.
Gotcha. But there's also a chance this design doesn't even land with the 17, right?
Exactly. There's a little bit of chatter that maybe this is actually for the iPhone 18, coincided with the 20th anniversary of the original iPhone.
Okay, so keep expectations in check on the design front for now.
Pretty much. It just shows how much is still up in the air this early.
Definitely. Let's switch gears to something that always gets attention, the cameras. Sounds like the 17 Pro and Pro Max could be getting some serious firepower.
Oh, yeah. The big headline rumor here is a new 48-megapixel telephoto lens, sometimes called a tetraprism lens.
48 megapixels, that's a huge jump from the current 12 megapixels on the 16 Pro's telephoto, isn't it?
It absolutely is.
Right.
And if that happens, and remember, the 16 Pro already has 48-megapixel main and ultra-wide cameras.
Right.
Then the iPhone 17 Pro would be the first iPhone ever to have all three rear cameras rocking 48-megapixel sensors.
Wow. A full 48 MP setup. What does that actually mean for taking photos?
Well, potentially much better detail, especially when you zoom in. It could allow for true lossless optical zoom at higher magnification levels. That's something people have really wanted. Closes the gap a bit with some Android competitors on zoom.
Okay, that makes sense. And it's not just the rear cameras getting attention, is it? The front camera might be getting an upgrade too.
That's the rumor. The front-facing or selfie camera on the 17 Pro could double its resolution from 12 megapixels up to 24.
24 megapixels for selfies. So better FaceTime calls, sharper self-portraits.
Exactly. More detail, potentially better low-light performance, and definitely more flexibility if you like to crop your photos after taking them. For anyone doing vlogging or lots of social media with the front camera, that could be a really nice bump.
Yeah, I can see that being popular. Okay, moving on from cameras to the display itself. What are we hearing about the screens on the iPhone 17?
Couple of interesting things here. For the Pro models, there's talk of potentially more power-efficient screens.
Ooh, power efficient is always good. How?
It's some pretty techy stuff called low dielectric T technology. Basically, using different materials in part of the display construction to reduce signal interference and cut down on energy loss.
Okay, so the end result could be better battery life.
That's the hope, yes.
Yeah,
Always a major selling point if they can pull it off.
definitely. Anything else on the display front?
There's another rumor, maybe for the standard iPhone 17, about better scratch resistance and less reflection.
Oh.
Yeah, the phrase being thrown around is a super hard anti-reflective layer. This has led some people to guess it might be something similar to Corning's Gorilla Glass Armor, which is on Samsung's S24 Ultra.
Right. That stuff is supposed to be pretty tough and less reflective.
It is. But, Apple already uses their ceramic shield on the current Pro models, which they say is very durable. So we'll see how much of an upgrade this really is if it happens.
Tougher screens are always welcome, though. Now, what about the dynamic island? That little cutout at the top. Any changes expected there?
Actually, yes. There's a specific rumor, just for the Pro Max model, the bigger one, that it might get a smaller dynamic island.
Really? How would they do that?
Apparently by using something called a meta lens for the Face ID components. So like a super thin, flat lens that uses microscopic patterns to focus light really precisely.
Huh. Metal.
If they do that, it would be the first actual size change to the dynamic island since they introduced it. Could make the screen feel, a little more edge to edge.
Interesting. A shrinking dynamic island could be a subtle but nice refinement. Okay, let's talk materials. Titanium was the big thing recently for the Pro models. What's the story for iPhone 17 Pro?
Well, this is a bit of a surprise, potentially. The expectation now is that the 17 Pro and Pro Max might actually go back to using an aluminum frame.
Back to aluminum. But they just switched to titanium, like with the 16 Pro's desert titanium finish. Why switch back?
That's what everyone's asking. Titanium felt premium, lighter.
Yeah.
The reason being floated is actually environmental goals. Apparently, aluminum has a lower carbon footprint to produce compared to titanium.
Ah, okay. So sustainability might be driving the decision.
Seems like it. It would fit with Apple's broader green initiatives. They even mentioned the sky blue aluminum on the MacBook Air as an example of how nice aluminum can look. Still, it does raise questions. Does aluminum feel as pro as titanium did?
That's a fair point. It'll be interesting to see how they position that if it happens. Now, speaking of positioning, there's talk of a whole new model, the iPhone 17 Air.
Yes, this sounds like a big shakeup.
Yeah.
The idea is this Air model would be super thin and light, and it would basically replace the current Plus model in the lineup.
Super thin. How thin are we talking?
The rumors are pointing to just 5.5 millimeters thick and weighing around 145 grams, which is, noticeably lighter than even the standard iPhone 16.
Wow, 5.5 millimeters. That's really slim. My first thought, though, is battery life. How can you fit a decent battery in something that thin?
And that is the huge concern everyone's raising. One leaker suggested the battery capacity could be only around 2,800 milliamp.
Oof. How does that compare?
It's small. Significantly smaller than the standard iPhone 16. Way smaller than the Pro Max. You'd have to look back quite a few years to find a main iPhone with a battery that tiny.
So potentially really short battery life, like maybe the worst in years for a non-SE iPhone.
That's the worry, yeah.
Yeah.
Feels like a major trade-off just to achieve that thinness. Is that what most people want? Probably not.
Are there any tech tricks they might use to help the battery situation?
Well, there's some speculation about using newer silicon anode battery tech. That could potentially boost the energy density by maybe 15% or so.
Okay, 15% helps,
But starting from such a low base of 2,800 milliamp, still not going to be amazing. People have even joked about Apple bringing back the battery case for it, but...
Yeah, that kind of defeats the whole ultra-thin point, doesn't it?
Exactly. It feels like the Air might be aimed at a very specific niche buyer who values thinness above almost everything else.
Right. Okay, let's talk performance. Under the hood, what kind of chips are we expecting?
So the iPhone 17 Pro models are pretty much set to get the next-gen chip, presumably called the A19.
A19. Any major breakthroughs expected there, like 2 nanometer?
Doesn't look like it'll be the first 2-nanometer chip, no. But it's expected to use TSMC's newer N3P process, which historically means, more transistors packed in.
So faster and maybe more efficient.
That's the usual outcome, yeah. Probably looking at that typical 10-20% speed bump we often see generation over generation, and hopefully some power savings too.
Always welcome. And what about RAM? More memory for the Pro models.
The analysts are predicting a jump to 12 gigabytes of RAM for the 17 Pro and Pro Max.
Up from 8 GB in the current Pros.
Exactly, an extra 4 GB. More RAM generally helps with multitasking, keeps apps running smoothly in the background, especially the heavier ones.
That sounds good.
But there's a slight caveat. One analyst thinks maybe only the Pro Max gets the 12 GB, and the regular Pro stays at 8 GB, or maybe gets less of a bump. So, still a little uncertain there.
Okay, something to watch. Now, the part nobody likes talking about, price. Are these things going to cost more?
Yeah. Unfortunately, all signs are pointing towards potential price increases, pretty much across the board.
Why? Just inflation or?
The main reason being cited is the new U.S. tariffs on imports from China. That directly impacts Apple's costs.
Ah, right, the tariffs.
Yeah. One analyst from Bank of America actually put a number on it. They suggest that Apple might need about a 9% price hike to cover those tariff costs and, manage potential customer pushback.
9%. Wow. What could that translate to in actual dollars?
Well, if that happens, you could be looking at the base model iPhone 17 starting somewhere around $1,300.
Ouch. $1,300 for the base model.
Potentially, yeah. And remember, Apple just introduced the iPhone 16 at $599, which kind of set a new, higher floor for entry level. It definitely feels like prices are trending up.
No kidding. I bet the Reddit threads are buzzing about that, too.
Oh, absolutely. Lots of comments about how expensive iPhones are getting and people questioning if the new features are really worth that kind of money, especially if their current phone is still working fine.
It's a really valid point. Which brings us nicely to that big question. Should you buy an iPhone 16 now or wait it out for the 17? Let's recap the potential upsides of waiting for the 17 Pro.
Okay, so the key rumored advantages for the 17 Pro over the 16 Pro would be that possible new design, the significantly upgraded telephoto camera, that 48MP sensor, the faster A19 chip, and maybe more RAM.
Those are definitely compelling points, especially the camera and performance for certain users. But what's the case for just getting an iPhone 16 now?
Well, iPhone 16 is, let's be honest, still a fantastic phone. Great screen, really fast A18 Bionic chip, excellent cameras. Plus, it gets all the new Apple Intelligence features, and it's going to get software updates for 5, maybe 6 years.
True. Longevity's good.
And critically, it's available now. If you need a phone, you need a phone. Also, if the 17 series is more expensive, the 16 will look like a better value proposition. And for people maybe switching from Android, the 16 is a great current entry point.
Right. We saw comments like from someone with an iPhone 13 Pro Max basically asking if these rumored 17 features are enough to justify shelling out again.
Exactly. That upgrade calculus gets harder as phones get better and more expensive.
Okay, so let's try and wrap this up. We've gone through a ton of rumors about the iPhone 17 lineup. Quick summary of the biggest potential changes.
Sure. We've got the possible Pro model redesign with that horizontal camera bar, major camera upgrades, potentially all 48MP sensors on the back of the Pro, and a 24MP front camera. Display improvements like better efficiency and maybe scratch resistance, a potential shift back to aluminum frames for the Pros for environmental reasons.
And the new Air model?
Right. The new ultra-thin iPhone 17 Air, which looks sleek, but raises big questions about battery life. Plus, the A19 chip performance boost and, looming over everything, those potential price hikes due to tariffs.
It really is a lot to think about. And as we always say with these things, these are just rumors, leaks, speculation.
Absolutely. Nothing's final until Tim Cook is on stage. Things can change, rumors can be wrong, got to take it all with a grain of salt.
Definitely. Always good to be critical.
Which leads us to a final thought for you listening. Given everything we've talked about, the potential upgrades, the possible downsides like battery life on the Air, and especially those potential price increases, how do these rumors actually affect your thinking about your next phone?
Yeah, what's the one feature, if it turns out to be true, that would be the biggest deciding factor for you? The camera, the design, maybe even the price itself.
Or maybe it's the lack of a feature, or a potential downside like the Air's battery. It's definitely something to chew on while we wait for the official word from Apple.